Hey, everybody, thanks for joining me today for another episode of my podcast, Mark My Words. I'm your host, Mark Lipton. With me today on my podcast is Gus Giannopoulos. Gus is the owner of Axios Coatings. They are a distributor of coatings in the Northeast. And this is a really interesting story. Before I get into it, though, just a little background. The number of lines available to paint retailers over the last several decades has dropped precipitously. When I came into the business full time in 1988, we were a three-line dealership at the time. We had Pittsburgh, Pratt and Lambert, and Benjamin Moore. And beyond that, we had access to a myriad of lines, including some very strong lines that were headquartered right in New York. I wouldn't know how many there were, but perhaps as many as a dozen manufacturers just in the New York metropolitan area that all had quality coatings that were readily available to independent paint retailers. Over the 30 years of my career, the number of those brands has dropped precipitously. And the number of brands available to retailers within the independent channel continues to drop. And so at the beginning, that was all happening through consolidation as companies got bought. Brands became unavailable or they got shared with other channels and independents moved away feeling like it wasn't in their best interest. And even recently, Pratt and Lambert and Pittsburgh basically have shown their intention to exit any sort of exclusive relationship with any of their brands and the independent channel. So more and more dealers find themselves struggling to find brands that can fully support all of their needs. And the experience we've all shared over the last couple of years where paint has been decidedly unavailable at a time when growth in demand has been extensive. And so that combination has really put a number of dealers in a difficult spot, unable to get enough material to meet the demand that they had. And most of the dealers that I talk to continue to share word that this is a pressing and ongoing problem, and that even though the shortages at most manufacturers have gotten significantly better, and even though Benjamin Moore, and I've reported myself on this podcast, has done excellent, generally speaking, compared to other players in the space, the other paint manufacturers, when it comes to supplying their dealers with materials, still shortages persist. And still, even more than shortages, dealers often find themselves stuck with the strategic disadvantage of not being able to buy material from more than one manufacturer because the manufacturers available as dealer-only brands have just exited the market. And so that is all about to change, at least for dealers in the Northeast. My friend Gus Giannopoulos is going to tell you a really interesting story. KellyMoore, that's a paint manufacturer, a very large paint manufacturer on the West Coast of the United States that distributes as far east as Texas. To my knowledge, they're $500, $600, $700 million a year company. They have decided to go all in with the independent retailers in the Northeast. And beginning now, this is in fact their introduction. They are making their brand available to dealers in the Northeast, and they have opened up a distribution center as well as a dealer support center in New Jersey to be able to handle the business. And so managing all of that in partnership with KellyMoore is a former independent paint retailer, Gus Giannopoulos. Gus had 9 stores in New York City. That's how I got to know Gus probably 20 or 30 years ago. We were both Pratt and Lambert dealers at the time, and through trading materials that we might have needed to keep the stores going or meeting at Pratt and Lambert events over the years, I got to know Gus, and he shared with me recently what they were doing in the Northeast, what his plans were in the Northeast, and what KellyMoore's plans were in the Northeast. And so I expressed my desire to break the story for him. It is unusual, to say the least, to find a major national brand committing to the independent retailer channel. The way KellyMoore is now, or I should say recommitting, they sell through their own stores in California as well as through a small network of independent retailers, which are around their own stores in California and, as I said, out west towards as far east as Texas. But this is a major commitment by a major paint brand to make paint available in the Northeast of the United States exclusively to the independent channel. And I think this is a fabulous story for dealers that are struggling to find supply, for dealers that are struggling to find enough choices to meet the demands that they have. For dealers that are thinking strategically, it's in their best interests to have access to more than one brand, as all dealers, in my opinion, should be thinking, at least strategically, as all dealers should be thinking, then this is a really fabulous opportunity for dealers. And so I wanted to get this story out there as soon as it was available. Gus and his organization are just getting started now. They've opened up their first few dealers. Their warehouse is now full of paint. And so it's time to get this story out there. And so I wish Gus the very best of luck in pulling this off, and KellyMoore the very best of luck in pulling this off. I'm happy to see another manufacturer taking interest in the independent channel. The channel has grown, to my knowledge, 50% thereabouts and over the course of the last 3 years. And that has created enormous stress on dealers. And so I actually think that this announcement by KellyMoore and Axios Coatings is part of the solution to some of those problems. So give a listen. Let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, write me, text me. Brian, put my number up there. Let me know what you want to hear. And here's Gus. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. It's Mark. With me today on my podcast is Gus Giannopoulos. Gus is the owner of the Axios Group. They are the distributors of KellyMoore paint on the East Coast of the United States. Gus, my friend, how are you?
I'm very well. Thank you, Mark, for having me.
And so, Gus, I know, of course, your personal history. You and I have known each other for several decades now, but why don't you fill in everybody listening to your career path that brought you here?
Well, thank you for having me on, Mark. It's a pleasure. Yes, we are friends for a long time. My career path, well, began in 1995. Brought Brooklyn Elton Paints. Look at that. Nice little pipe. We grew to 9 paint stores, transitioned out of them after felt the market changed.
And so tell me, what happened to those stores that you had?
So we consolidated. It was a period, 2008, I believe, we started consolidating.
I remember those days. I nearly lost my 2 stores in 2009 during that horrific economic, it was a calamity in New York.
Right. So yeah, so we pulled back, we changed our business relationships, consolidated 2 stores, just recently sold them, got out of that. And KellyMoore really enticed me to join the team and help them build their brand in the Northeast.
And so before we go on, we're going to talk about this business that you're building to distribute paint to paint retailers in the Northeast. And that's all for KellyMoore. But I think there are a lot of retailers who don't know who KellyMoore is. So let's start with a little conversation. Who is KellyMoore?
Well, KellyMoore, they're about a $500 million paint company. They focus on premium products, therefore, and products that 80% of their sales come from the contractors.
Right. Residential repaint.
Commercial work, that's 80, that's their core business. The retail side, they're the balance, but their business is all geared towards contractors.
And so why don't retailers in the Northeast know much about them? Have they never distributed in the Northeast previously?
They haven't come to the Northeast, just they haven't had the means to do it. Shipping out of Texas is kind of difficult. It's 5 days, maybe 10 days sometimes for shipping.
Yeah.
And that was
getting worse
Right.
worse and getting more expensive, right? The last 3 years have changed the way products are distributed around the United States.
Right. So yeah, correctly. And in our course of conversations that we've had together, it was very important that they establish a warehouse, right? Support a warehouse in the Northeast to be able to service the dealers. There was a big thing on my end that it wouldn't work any other way. And they committed to the warehouse and investing a lot of money to really do this. Others.
And so there's actually 2 businesses investing. You built Axios to do the servicing, and KellyMoore has made a commitment with the material and everything else that comes with, selling paint dealers, the racks and machines and all of that.
Correct. Their rack, their support, the show support, their trade shows, whatever the dealer needs to help them sell the brand, they'll get behind it.
And so KellyMoore was interested in growing in the Northeast. It's an interesting story. How is it that became Axios?
Well, we needed a vehicle to be able to distribute the paint. So we decided to form Access Coatings Group, and we found the location, built out the warehouse, and we're basically the sales, main distribution, the sales and logistics for KellyMoore.
In the Northeast. What an interesting model, by the way. What an interesting model. I'm not aware of any, frankly, significant manufacturers in the paint side of the independent channel using a distribution model like this. And so good for you guys for jumping in at what seems to be the right time. There seems to be a lot of uncertainty in the market. There seems to be a lot of unknowns in the market as far as distribution, availability of products. So good for you guys, Gus. It sure seems like you're well timed. It sounds to me like you guys are well fixed for paint with KellyMoore. What are you putting on in New Jersey around all of that?
So at Axios, our goal is to have the support staff, the sales team, the back office will be bidding on projects for individual dealers who really want to get into that business.
Oh, interesting.
Pushing the business into them, right? We're going to be marketing their neighborhoods, the type of business they want to be.
And so that's the advantage of the dealer buying from a local distributor, an independent distributor, is that you understand, having had stores, you understand what it takes to get paint sold on the streets.
100%, Mark.
Yeah, good for you.
That's it. Having come from that side of the business.
Yeah, good for you guys.
I knew what worked for me, and we're going to apply that for everybody else.
Yeah, it's fucking brilliant, man. It's a great idea. I told you that when we had lunch 2 years ago. I said I thought it was a great idea. And now that I see how the world played out, I think you're going to end up looking like a genius here. Right. But, obviously nobody knew about the pandemic, but nonetheless, I think your timing is fabulous. When I first came into the business full time, which would have been 1988, the business model in New York was multiple lines, right? My stores, Tremont Paint, we had 2 stores. My stores were Benjamin Moore, Pratt and Lambert, and Pittsburgh dealers, all at the same time. And that would have been expected to be a successful paint dealer in New York. And then over the last, what would you say, Gus, 20 years, 25 years? Correct. All of those companies that as New Yorkers, we knew as Paragon Paint, General Coatings, and all of the local manufacturers, you're right, all disappeared. And it's interesting because there's a lot of changes in the market right now as far as distribution goes. And so it's interesting, that played out over the decades. And you're right, there's really only a handful of manufacturers left that are making products available to the independent channel. And Sherwin-Williams, I don't know if you've seen this in the news, but Sherwin-Williams guys recently just effectively pulled out of the channel what little they had left in the channel with All Pro. All Pro kicked them to the curb recently. If you listen to the Pittsburgh CEO on their earnings announcements, he tells you outright, we're looking to give all the business that's currently going to independents, we're looking to give it to Home Depot. And so all of that has disappeared. There's really nobody left except for, the one main supplier in the category. And I find that, and I always have, even as when I own my own stores, I find that to be strategically dangerous for independent paint retailers to have all their eggs in one basket like that. That, in fact, is part of the reason why I say you've got such a great opportunity, because I think a lot of dealers are waking up finding out, wow, I don't have a second line anymore.
And we're here to be that second line, to support the dealers in a way they have not been supported in these last few years. It's our goal is to allow them to run their business the way they see fit, not the way we see fit. We don't want to be your partner. We want to be your supplier. We want to help drive paint sales, because if you guys succeed, they succeed, we succeed. It's really simple. It was core values that I've always adhered to when I had my own business, and it's what I want for the dealers. It's their brand. It's
really the point. The lesson of the last several years, Gus, is really this, that having just one paint supplier is strategically dangerous. And even though during the worst of the shortages, I found, compared to the rest of the industry, Benjamin Moore dealers did extraordinarily well compared to the rest of the industry. In reality, they still struggled greatly at the beginning. And that was because they had nowhere else to turn at times where there were manufacturers that did have paint. And so that's why I've always advised the customers, the dealers that I do consulting with, I tell almost all of them they should have a second line. I've been saying that for 30 years. I do understand that, people, old friends of mine at Benjamin Moore, they get, mad at me when I say that out loud. But I just think it has nothing to do with Benjamin Moore. I'm obviously a great supporter of Benjamin Moore. My family was a Benjamin Moore dealer for 112 years. I just think that strategically you're at risk if you have all of your eggs in that one basket like that. And so what would be the advantages, in your opinion, Gus, of having a second line in your stores?
Right. Basically, you need access to a greater amount of products, some specialty products that you're not be able to get. Your supplier today may be out of stock and you have another avenue to go to. It's really for many reasons. Profitability, maybe one's a little bit more profit than the other.
I always found I was able to use Pratt and Lambert and Benjamin Moore in conjunction and against each other, price-wise, I'm speaking of, as I juxtaposed them price-wise in my stores to make them both more profitable.
From both sides, even from purchasing power, right?
And that as well.
That's what we want. We want to bring product to you that would help your business, Mark, the dealer's business.
Yep.
In turn, it'll come to us down the road. It always comes back.
Well, they're buying the paint from you, right?
Right. So we're not worried, and we know we have the quality in the product and the pricing that really can contribute to the dealer being more profitable.
And so, what are you guys going to be adding when you say dealer support, which you spent a lot of time talking about today? What are you guys going to be adding in your New Jersey location that fits into that category of dealer support?
Well, we're going to have a sales team. Back office support for the dealers. We have a dedicated person to market, to Instagram, Twitter, all that social media, websites that can push sales to the local dealer. We'll have hands-on trade shows, events at each dealer if they want to have. We're going to tailor the program to what best fits their business, because everybody's different. Everybody's going to run their business differently. We're able to tailor that. It's not one cookie cutter.
And so, Gus, you guys are on the road now. You're talking to dealers. What are dealers telling you? Have dealers, generally speaking, been willing to speak to you about taking in a paint line? I mean, obviously, that's a very big decision for most paint dealers.
Mark, they're reaching out to us. So they see a need for someone else, and they're interested. We're just trying to provide the answers. We're trying to show them that we can be an associate of theirs, a supplier, a main supplier for them, and an added value to their business. They're asking, if we have paint, and they're happy to hear that the answer is yes. Right? We have paint coming in. Pretty much everything's online. Still have a couple items, but they're not the core items. Core product, we're in business, and that's why we hit the road. We're answering the calls.
That's when you started actually opening up dealers, is when you had paint. Had you had trouble getting paint up until this point?
Yeah, we had a year delay that we really pulled back, only because we did not want to open somebody up and not be able to fulfill our commitment. I'd rather sit back and wait until we're ready and we know that we could support them. I will not put any dealers at risk and not be able to fulfill our commitment to them. So,
well, Gus, that makes you the kind of person that I've always known you to be for the 30 years that I know you. So good for you, and good for doing business the way you're doing it, and good for you for having what I believe to be absolutely fabulous timing when it comes to opening this up. I think the independent channel has grown dramatically in the last 24 months. Most dealers that I know are, I wouldn't even know over the last 3 years, most dealers I know are up in the 50% range. And so that's a tremendous amount of new volume that's been pumped into the channel, and they need paint. They need paint and they need support. And so good for you for standing there offering them exactly that at just the right time. I think it's fabulous.
And to be honest, we haven't marketed anything. This is all a word of mouth, and we're getting calls and people are hearing about it. So that's where we're at. And we're happy to be here for them. We want to prove that we can be their support.
Well, what an absolutely fabulous way to end it, Gus. Any final thoughts as we wrap this up?
Mark, thank you for having me on. For any dealer that would like to reach out, Gus at Axios Coatings Group. My phone number is 888-2266. That's pretty much it.
I'm excited for you, Gus, and I'm happy that you put yourself in what I believe is a good position, and I'm excited for you. I wish you nothing but success, my friend.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. I know it's coming from the heart, so I appreciate it.